so much for having me.
All right, Kelly, get that last sip of coffee and let's be in a ready state, if you will.
Oh, no. It's not the last sip of coffee. It's just the next sip of coffee. There's a very big difference.
So, one thing I say, and I believe you mentioned this quote, and tell me if you truly, truly believe it. Uh, you've said sitting is the new smoking. And
Believe it or not, I did not say that. That's James Levine of the Mayo Clinic, who is one of the nation's preeminent obesity researchers. And I think what he's saying is that when we're looking at this global health epidemic, we've got to start to tangle out of this knot of like, what are the things we can control? And what we're seeing is that people are not moving enough, not engaged in enough activity during the day. And that creates a whole host of issues. So it's not that sitting is bad. If you're a coach and you're listening to this, when you sit down, it is like heaven, right? You're off your butt, finally off your feet. But for the average person, I think what we're not appreciating is that human beings are designed to move all day long, and you should hit the pillow and black out. And even just as an allegory of the fact that we're having so many people struggle to go to sleep at night, and that the sleep aid industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, then and what's 5-hour energy about? Why do you need 5-hour energy? Because you're sleeping like crap. That you are caught in this depressant stimulant cycle. You're not moving enough during the day. You can't tangle out, and so you don't feel awake and you don't feel sleepy, and your sleep sucks. And then all of a sudden you're 40 or 50 and you're 20 pounds overweight, and it's an issue. So, sitting as you're smoking is really shorthand for, hey, what does it really mean to be a modern human, and how do I wrap my modern human head around who I am as a person, and then balance that in a way that doesn't feel like it's one more thing I have to do. This shouldn't be effort to go walk and move a little bit more. You shouldn't have to put it on your to-do list.
well, I haven't sat since 2014 because of you. So I took it to the extreme. And then the other extreme I took is I should be able to sit in the bottom of my squat for 10 minutes, which I can comfortably do now because of you and because
Oh,
of your videos.
so how about this? One is that, we think you should be able to perch up against a stool and wiggle around, especially if you're an athlete. If you want to go, right now I think we're battling this sort of this notion of like, well, human beings are pretty resilient. Like, just go to any other country and you don't have to see elite exercise. People that like, what are the through narratives of people's kind of daily experience? And one of them is that they walk a lot more, they ride their bikes a lot more, they just move around more. But you also see that humans aren't fragile. Like, we really are super, super robust human beings. And, I think, to your point, what we're asking with the 10-minute squat test, that was a really low bar. What do you mean you can't like make a campfire or take a poop in the woods or have dinner in Thailand? I mean, people are like, what, squat all the way down? We're like, whoa. What do you think God gave you all that ankle range of motion, hip function for? And what we were just trying to do with that first squat test, which was 2010, right, was that blew people's minds and people couldn't even do it. So, the world has changed and continues to change. We're seeing that people have certainly become a lot more sophisticated and are engaged in really different nutritional practices generally. At our local store, and granted we live in Marin here, but there are a lot of paleo health keto magazines at the rack. So something has changed, and that may be what people were doing isn't working, or they don't feel the way they should look, or look the way they should think they should look, or they can't get something done. But again, I like to say is like, what are we trying to do? And I think what we're trying to do is, have full access to our physiology through our whole lifespan. That means we're going to be 100 years old, and your knees are going to be 100, and your back is designed to be 100. No problem. You're going to outlive your gonads. You probably need to go on some testosterone when you're like 85. But that seems reasonable, And in the meantime, when we're losing just big swaths of our capacity, we should be curious about that. And for the rest of us who are interested in performance, not just interested in activities of daily living, then we really can say these are our best practices. And I think that's what's really, it gets confusing sometimes for the physical therapists, for the chiropractors in the world, because, we're interested in having full ability and full range. And yeah, you can slouch all you want, but if you want to run fast or take a breath or swim or dunk a basketball, man, that rounded upper back position is going to be a problem eventually. So we're going to have to deal with it eventually, right? So what are the best practices of being human? And it's okay. I think we got time to correct it. So anyway, that's what I mean by sitting to the smoking.
At a very basic level, if a CrossFitter is listening to this, or someone that just wants to train hard and they can't sit at the bottom of their squat for 10 minutes, should that be the primary focus of their lives?
Well, no, I think your loving relationships should be the primary focus of your lives, and you're being a member of your community and tribe. But what that really speaks to is that you can still be really great in your life and in sport. You probably go to the Olympics. But one of the things that we have realized is that when we CrossFit, we don't have to do a lot of corrective exercise. So corrective exercise really isn't part of the language of CrossFit. Sometimes some assistance work is, you should do some bicep curls and some push downs, right? We should be doing, squatting a little different way, like kind of, some Cossack squats, and we do some step up, heavy loaded step ups. And those are assistance exercises. I wouldn't call those corrective exercises. And the reason, let me tell you a story, is that Jason Kalip and I were just in Germany teaching together at a Perform Better Summit, which is the big sort of functional fitness, community in Munich. And this is the biggest, I'm trying not to sneeze, the biggest fitness community kind of get together in Europe. And what Jason and I did was we realized we did a workout in the morning with everyone. I wouldn't say workout, we just got everyone going. But we did 2 minutes as a partner workout where someone did 5 good burpees where they had to jump and land in a good position. Foot pressures even, feet are straight, athletic. Like, why are we training? Are we trying to get fit? Or are we trying to train for something? And my idea is, hey, we should be all agreeing why we're moving a certain way. And if it's just to get my heart healthier and get my heart rate up and make myself insulin sensitive, it doesn't matter how we do that. Like, you can go on the assault bike, right? You can swing kettlebell in a little tiny range. But for the rest of us, I'm like, hey, I'd like to play Frisbee and run and jump and cut and surf and be able to snowboard and ski and bike and do all the fun stuff that means to be human. And what we had everyone do is jump up off the ground, land in a good position, and then in the air, point their toes and squeeze their butt and put their arms overhead like they're blocking a ball at the net. So, and then land again in what position? This athletic position, because they may need to go left, they need to go right. And the idea is not just how fast can they get up and off the ground and do work. And CrossFit has won the war on work. People can work hard now. And the next question is, okay, you can work hard. And I think when we started this thing 15 years ago, people couldn't work hard. I think that was really a shock to them. And Greg was walking around just poking holes in people's fitness, and they thought they were fit, but they weren't. But that ship has sailed, let me tell you. People are fit. They are much fitter, an order of magnitude fitter, especially in our communities. So Jason and I are in this Perform Better Summit community, which is not a CrossFit community. And one person had to do planks and breathe the nose and kind of do some shoulder touches. And the other person had to do 5 burpees, and they switched. We just did that for 2 minutes. We rested a minute. And people fell apart. They just fell apart. And I guess the question is, we're seeing that in CrossFit particularly is that we don't use corrective exercise. So here are all these people who are doing all this functional fitness and functional training and doing a lot of, we'll just call it functional training, because that I think starts to smell like bands and corrective exercises, and you rotate with cords and you do all this smells like fitness stuff, but it's not the real thing. And if you're a CrossFitter or you're in a CrossFit community, or let's just say a legitimate strength and conditioning community, the thing is the overhead squat, the thing is the jerk, the thing is the pull-up. And if you can't do the thing, we immediately scale or modify backwards. So our starting place is, this is what normal is. This is what normative is. This is what our goal is. And then if you can't do that, we immediately give you a band. We slow you down. But you're still going to do pull-ups today. You're just not going to do as many high volume and maybe not kipping, but damn it, you're doing pull-ups. And the thing that you're doing is the scaled or modified version of the thing, not some corrective exercise ring row immediately, right? You're going to get pull-ups. And I think what that does for us is it makes it, as us as a community, it makes us much more competent at developing real transferable skills. And one of the things that we're noticing is that when we start in that assumption that the thing we're going to do is press the barbell over our head, even if you can't do that, we're going to give you dumbbells. But today we're pressing. We're not going to do crawling. We're not going to do some other landmine thing. Like, that's not the thing. And our language of full capacity, and then if you can't be there, immediately scale, really starts to create interesting conversations that people are just beginning to really appreciate and discover. And, you know, the notion that you can't squat all the way down means you can't do Olympic lifting. You can't pull from the ground. You can't do a pistol. You can't access your position. Doesn't mean you can't move, right? We're going to squat high, but it means that you're going to be engaged in positions that are what we call workarounds or compensations. And so you're going to be leaking force. You're going to be putting yourself into a position that doesn't translate very well to other movements and other sports. You're going to be engaged in positions that don't generate peak or optimal power function. So, you know, you can do all your push-ups with your hands turned around backwards if that's the way you can do push-ups. But my kids who can turn their hands forward are going to crush you. And so really, it really comes a conversation of movement output, of biomotor output. And if you can't squat all the way down, what you've realized is that your strength and conditioning system is also a diagnostic tool, and that's okay. And because we don't know where you came from, we don't know, you know, how long you rode in the police car as a cop. We don't know what combat boot you had to wear. We don't know if it was, no one ever said it was important. So everyone who comes to us ultimately is an expression of their environment and an output of a system. And that system may have never said to you, you probably should be able to squat down and take a poop. Right? It doesn't matter. Because if you did, you would have been working on this for years. So now suddenly, not only do we have what I think is one of the fullest, most complete strength and conditioning systems in the world that develops capacities that are really stable across a whole host of contexts. This is why it's really good. Not only do you have to push your arms over your head with complete normal range of motion, you got to do it with kettlebells and dumbbells. You got to do it with a barbell. You got to hang from a pull-up bar. You've got to be able to do it from downward dog. You're also going to be able to do handstand push-ups and handstands, right? Already, I've got you. And by the way, we're going to get there from a snatch, and we're going to get there from a press, right? And I just change all of the directions. Oh, by the way, we're going to power clean, and then we're going to go overhead. So, you know, we've really challenged this innate motor pattern or this movement skill, and we've done it under a whole bunch of contexts. That way, when you go swim or play ball, you know how to put your arm over your head, and your brain says, oh, I've got this skill in a whole host of environments. And that's why Olympic lifting is not a gimmick. You know, gymnastics is not a gimmick, while handling kettlebells and dumbbells is not a gimmick. And why those things end up making the bench basics of what we're doing in terms of movement. So again, what's nice is because we have such a legitimate strength and conditioning system, we should really be stoked that we don't have to use another correlate model to figure out what we have wrong. All you have to do is the thing. And you're like, well, I can't do the thing today. I don't know why, but or I got injured. I tore my ACL in high school, or, you know, I've been on this red eye, or, you know, I just didn't know, you know? And so what's nice is then we can then say, here's what is normal. And until we say you should be able to squat all the way down, and that's typical, that's what is good human function, complete human function, then all we're doing is exercising. The second we make it a diagnostic tool and a training stimulus, bam, we're winning the race. And that's what this is about. You don't have to learn another language. You don't have to learn another, you know, it's like we train in Spanish, but we are going to do rehab in Esperanto. Like, what the hell is that? Like, I don't speak Esperanto. Like, instead, why doesn't the rehab language or the movement language or the rehabilitative language or the whatever, the restorative language, why isn't it the language that we already use? Push up, pull up, squat, deadlift, hinge, pull, squat, you know, that's the thing. And I think that's why we're making such good gains and why this thing never gets old. I mean, we're rolling into our 15th year of owning a CrossFit gym. We're the 21st CrossFit in the world. Juliet and I yesterday did a salt bike, heavy ball pickups, ball slams, and strict presses for 30 minutes. And we'll never get tired of doing this thing because it just doesn't get old, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at your box, we did some nose breathing, and it blew my mind because that was the first time, and it was very, very challenging to do double unders while breathing through your nose. And I think we're seeing this trend of people understanding you need to move smarter, you need to move better. The clock is important, but at the same time, if that's all you do is chase intensity, that's not ideal either. How do you continue to push that and promote that at the box level? Obviously, you're at the forefront of this, so you can do it. How does that trickle down to the other 10,000 affiliates out there?
Well, first and foremost, everyone realizes eventually that you've got to pay attention to quality, because that's the limiter, right? Why do we teach Olympic lifting technique and then not care about it for everything else, right? You can't do the thing. And if you want to snatch more and be more efficient and run faster, it always comes down to technique. So here's the key, and this is what's so great about what it is we do, and it's been built in from the beginning, is that we need you. When we say intensity, let's define that, because that doesn't mean just, if you want intensity, let's go to SoulCycle. I'll show you intensity. Candles burning, people chanting, you'll die on a bike, right? Is that intense? Well, it turns out if I take your shape and then I challenge your shape with speed, right? We're not going to press, we're going to push press, right? We're going to do 20 push presses. That's another way, challenging with a little metabolic demand, challenging with a little speed. I can get you on the assault bike and then make you do something. So now I'm challenging you with cardiorespiratory demand. I can challenge you with load. Oh, that was really great. Make it heavier, right? I can challenge you by making you switch movement patterns. So now first we're going to ball slam, and then we're going to do pull-ups, and we're going to go back to ball slam. We're going to row and wall ball. So I'm asking you to change kind of, mechanics, change gears in your head, change patterns and programs in your head, right? We can also compete. All of a sudden I've got this other beautiful thing where I'm going next to Juliet and her friends, and I'm just trying to keep up. I don't even have a clock. Like, I'm just trying to keep up. It doesn't matter if there's a clock or not. So you can basically say going against the clock is metaphor for we're all going at the same time trying to get this amount of work done as well as we can. So that's what intensity is. And ultimately what we're saying is, hey, it's not the intensity. The intensity is crucial. But the intensity allows us to challenge our position. And if you are moving perfectly, then and it's easy, we're going to make it heavier. And my goal, or we're going to add more, or we're going to add more rounds, or we're going to go longer. My goal is to start to elicit movement errors. I need you to start making movement errors and, wait for it, correct those movement errors. And so, Jason and I in Germany got to be good cop, bad cop, for example. So I'm like, no, you've got to land with your foot straight and foot pressure and then jump from that flat foot, right? And Jason's like, you've got to go faster. And I'm like, no, you've got to move better. And he's like, you've got to go faster. And that is simultaneously what we need to have in our head. I don't just challenge my squat with more load. I need to challenge my squat with my heart rate's at 190 and I've got a big load, right? So suddenly what I'm trying to do is make it so difficult that you can handle the mistake and correct it. I'm trying to elicit at a certain intensity where you begin to make errors, but can feel the change. If you start, it's so heavy, you should start rounding your back and pulling that bar off the ground in a snatch. What are we doing? Well, what I see you doing is getting a lot of work done. I'm not even worried about your injury. I think you're really robust and badass. What I see is you have a crappy training pattern that's not going to translate to a whole lot of the things that we care about. And what you're doing is you're practicing at cross purposes to what you're doing. So it's crucial that we're thinking, am I working hard enough? Hang on one second. Jason, will you pull those lids off? 475. I'm baking bread. So which is part of I picked up finally, as Juliet said, I finally picked up a hobby after, 45 years. I finally have a hobby, and that's called bread baking. So I bake bread.
Is it good?
What do you mean, is it good? Yes, of course it's good. It's long fermented sourdough. Dude, this is my jam. I make my own. I have my sourdough starter. I feed it the day before. It's long fermented. I started this process, what's today? Tuesday? I started this on Sunday. It's good.
Is that worth it? I mean, you can buy bread pretty cheap these days.
You can buy bread, but it's not long fermentation. So, this bread has 4 ingredients.
What are those 4 ingredients?
Flour, water, salt, yeast. That's it.
That's all you need. That's all you need for bread.
It ferments for 24 hours on my counter. So it ferments for about 12 hours. I fold it and put it out, and then I put it in the fridge. that shuts the fermentation down for 12 hours, but still ferments. Then I cook it in a Dutch oven. So it's a pressure cooked steam thing. And people are like, I'm gluten intolerant, I'm celiac. I'm like, come eat my bread. And I'll guarantee you, one is that this beautiful organic flour that I've got from my shop up north, this beautiful flour, and this long fermentation plus, so it's a fermented food plus it's pressure cooked, man, it is. So if we want bread, we don't buy bread. We just have to make bread.
What I thought a Dutch oven was a sex act. Is that a real oven?
A Dutch oven is where you pin your girlfriend under the sheets and you fart. That's not a sex act.
Oh,
that's torture.
Oh, I thought
a Dutch oven is like a Le Creuset pot, heavy cast iron pot. It's basically what a Dutch oven is. So we cook it in this in a covered pot, and then it turns out, people think you have some kind of magical skill, but it's so easy to make bread. It's easy to make kombuchas. It's easy to make fermented foods.
Well, yeah, my wife is making kombucha. She's in that kind of phase right now. But are you suggesting she doesn't like Dutch ovens? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying no one likes a Dutch oven, bro.
So how long have you been doing this new hobby?
I'm like 18 months in.
What was the catalyst for that?
We had some bread at a friend's house, and I was like, I'd like to bake bread. And then, I ended up cooking the same loaf of bread for 18 months. So I finally, I'm like Jiro dreams of sushi. I finally have a loaf that I can consistently nail 99% of the time. It's always good. Now I'm starting to make things like English muffins out of the same dough. I'm branching out, but I figured out finally how to make the bread. So, and I tell you, it's a gift too. You give someone bread that you've been working on, people are like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crack. This bread is crack.
But if you walk in, you're like, can I have the pumpernickel? They're like, no. Long fermented sourdough. That's all we serve there, right?
No, yeah, and I appreciate in San Francisco. There's a coffee shop over in Potrero that has 1 cup size and 1 milk, and they're like, you're like, can I have a skim chai latte? And they're like, nope, you can't. And I appreciate that adherence, which is really what we're talking about, even in the big scheme. Like, no, you need to be able to put something over your head, not put something over your head like. Right? Like, you have to be able to do this. What is your problem? Why can't you do this? And I think when we start with that assumption, it's worth the journey. You should be able to bake bread, and not everyone has time, but baking bread once a week, twice a week is pretty easy. Specialization is for insects, right? Well, Mark had it right, and more importantly, Robert Heinlein had it right. I think that's what we're saying is if we can make the base a little bit more stable, if we can systematically put you under load, your collagen is tough. It's robust. You'll have discs that handle bad shapes and positions. You won't be as fragile. In fact, you'll be anti-fragile. That means that when you end up in some bad shapes, your body will get stronger. You'll be able to handle those loads and those adaptations. It's confusing because, there's the movement practice, which is what you should be doing with yourself every day, some kind of movement practice that uses your joints to full range of motion, puts you under some load, challenges your lungs a little bit, makes you a more skilled mover. So if you did something like GMB fitness and you deadlifted and you sprinted a hill, it's gonna be great. If you love to go to Soul Cycle and you jumped in Pilates and you front squatted, you're probably gonna be pretty great. And you probably also need to be in church or some kind of community, which is the thing that we always forget about in these training groups, is that we have these groups of humans who get together and belong to each other, and that tribe has really eroded itself, and that's the magic, I think, of small fitness or group fitness these days. So a lot of ways to get there. Just turns out I think CrossFit is a really good way, and then it gets confusing sometimes because we really like to train. And unfortunately, the training in the gym is not always the thing that matters the most, right? The thing that matters the most is how you go express that training. And it is easy to get sort of swallowed up in the PR machine where I got more pull-ups, and it's always about more pull-ups, And we try to remind people, pull-ups aren't really a great sport by themselves. And you should be figuring out how to go play some sports. You should go actually have some movement practices besides the gym. And, people have forgotten that that's the game.
The theme I'm hearing from you, be it about a tribe, about bread, about playing new sports is balance. And
Well, maybe it's not balance, it's practice, because I certainly go in and out of balance, you know. I think there's some notion that you're going to win this game and have it all nailed perfectly. And that's not really the truth, right? The truth is, man, you're going to focus on some areas of your life, and then you're like, oh crap, I got to go over here and do this. And you know, we've been in this long enough that we also see that people they chase a habit, you know, like people get super into biking, and then they become cyclists for a while, and they come back and they're like, yeah, I get kind of bored with that. And then, you know, they're like, hey, I'm an Olympic lifter. I'm like, that's awesome. You should go be an Olympic lifter. And then they're like, yeah, okay, I did a couple meets, and like, what's next? You know, and so if that's the allegory, that we want you to chase your habits, go after your urges, play more, you know, the fundamentals should remain constant. Are you sleeping? Are you eating enough? You know, I got to tell you that E.C. Sinkowski, who started a company called Optimized Me Nutrition, has something she calls the 800-gram challenge, and which is, can you eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables a day? And I love this thing. You know, it's the first nutritional intervention game. Like Juliet is my wife is a level 2 precision nutrition coach. She's a ninja. She knows Kate Shanahan of Deep Nutrition. She just says she's into it. She's really she's great, and it makes sense to her brain. I don't like to weigh and measure anything. If I eat like crap, I weigh the same. If I eat like a ninja, I weigh the same. You know, pretty tolerant. I don't eat I don't eat like a jerk. You know, my rule is like, no, I don't have a sweet thing until 8 p.m. You know, like I don't snack. I just, you know, I eat pretty well. But I have found that I have some strategies about eating more fruits and vegetables that seem to work for me well across whatever I'm doing. And so I think what ends up happening is we begin to nail down the fundamentals, and then you can swing wildly on the pendulum, whether you're working or, you know, but you always sort of have an anchor center, which is, boy, I train no matter what. So sometimes I'm only training, sometimes I'm training and playing, sometimes I'm training, playing, competing, right? Sometimes I'm barely training. I'm only competing. So I think if you feel like you've nailed it, good, tomorrow's going to be a new game, and you'll have to nail it again and again and again and again. I think that really ends up, it's difficult for us to simultaneously play the short game, feel like we're winning the short game, like the 6-week overhaul challenge, right? 5 weeks to a new you, ripped abs. And then I'm like, good, we'll see you in 10 years. You know, because I think that's really, it's difficult for us as humans to project the amount of context and time that we're playing. You just can't wrap your heads around it, that you're going to be 50, you're going to be 60, you're going to be 70. What does this look like for the next 30 or 40 years? So if you're engaged in a behavior that is really not super sustainable, is that imbalance? You know, I think that these are the great questions. What does my training look like? What does my physical practice look like? What does my eating and sleeping look like over the next 20 or 30 years? And that's really should be the thing that is our definition of balance.
Now you're talking about balance inside the gym. What about outside the gym? You are partners to your spouse. You guys have, like you said, one of the first affiliates. You've traveled the world coaching mobility, giving seminars. I imagine at different points in that journey there was little balance.
Sure.
What have you done?
I think that's it. You know, my wife is an attorney, right? We have 2 kids. We have 2 businesses and all the employees that come with that. And I think, you know, there are times where the margins are thin. You know, that's why it matters that your base practices are stable. And, you know, I think this notion that, you know, you're always going to be at some elite level of fitness it just can't be the case. Like you can't, you know, as my mother-in-law, when we were writing Supple Leopard, she was like, you can't write a book and own a gym and teach and have friends. Which one do you want to give up? And Jill and I were like, I guess we want to have friends. You know, like, you know, so look, I think that it's okay that there are times in your life where you're going to, if you get 3 or 4 days of training a week, and maybe some of that movement practices that you end up walking, or you do the Pilates Daily 100, or you rolled on a ball for 10 minutes, we need to expand our definition of what physical practice is, and not always thinking about, am I pulling heavy, right? I mean, if you want to focus your brain. Jump into a competition. Sign yourself up for something. That will focus you the opportunity to focus on something for a while. Like jump into a powerlifting meet, go sign up for a long bike ride. But then you'll see that when that's finished, that gives you a clean ending to sort of a center of focus. And the rest of the time, it's okay that your training volume goes up, your training volume goes down. And it's one of the reasons I think, I was just talking to, I was at the pool yesterday for our daughters play water polo. And I saw a triathlete, older guy, he's 50 something. And he was like, yeah, I was just in the car. We took a family trip and 2 weeks, I just didn't train much. And I was like, this is why we don't believe in periodization, unless you are a Russian living in a dorm on drugs and doing Olympic lifting, because we can't control your life. So, do volumes come up and volumes come down? Yes. Is life going to get in the way of your training split? Probably. Does it matter? Not at all. I think we're trying to make the average gym goer more of an elite athlete than they need to be, because they have the trappings of elite athleticism. Why? We Olympic lift. We swing kettlebells. We run. We're super conditioned all the time. But the idea is, hey, man, you're going to come in and out of focus, and your training volumes are going to get higher and lower. That's okay. Just keep playing. What's this look like? Don't worry about being, you blew your split. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. One of the things that we try to get all the coaches to do is that whenever coaches are together, we try to have one coach cook and everyone else has to eat their programming, right? You showed up at my gym. You didn't say, I'm on some secret squirrel program. I've got to do this split to maintain my strength and my snatch, or I'm not going to be able to hit my 82.75% times 3. Instead, you're like, what are we doing today? And you showed up and you went for it. And I think I appreciate that around our training communities, that it matters less than we think. And the goal is, let's do what you can today. If that was a walk and you ate some fruits and vegetables and you took care of your sleep and drank some water, maybe jumped into a 5-minute breath practice, count that a successful day. That's what a physical practice looks like. Tomorrow you're like, oh, I went for a run and then I did 100 swings. Is that a great training program? No, but that's a pretty damn good training program compared to the other. And then tomorrow you're like, I got to the gym. I hit my things, right? I ate my macros. I managed my sleep. So when you begin to expand your definition of balance into being able to control or improve any one of these aspects of your physical practice, you'll see that that's a successful engagement that isn't necessarily just about exercising and training heavy weights, but is about being a much more useful human being in society. And I think that's what George Hebert, who's the founder of MoveNat, and if you listen to Erwan McCour, that's really what is the best definition of fitness. Am I useful? And keeping yourself just doing what you can do, don't worry about it. We'll get the rest of it tomorrow. We got tomorrow. We'll win tomorrow. And I think it doesn't mean that you don't, if I'm on an airplane, so I just took, brutal red eyes, I don't eat carbohydrate on the airplane. I'm like, I'm not moving. I do not need to eat a single grain of rice. I don't drink on the airplane. Why? Because it's all about me trying to be able to sleep when I get there. And so suddenly I'm like, well, that's my physical practice. I'm on the airplane. I'm going to try to stretch once or twice. I'm not going to eat carbohydrates and I'm not going to drink alcohol. Killed it, right? And the rest of it, I'm a worthless athlete, human being. I'm 45 and I get there and I look puffy and feel terrible. But, I engage in and controlled what I can control, which means I don't feel like I'm a failure, which is what we've done to modern fitness. You create all these little check boxes. And if you don't check 50 boxes and you don't have meal prep done and you're not, engaged in a perfect program, you're some kind of failure. And that's not true at all.
I love it. And I love it, especially because it's what I've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think everybody, they get involved in CrossFit and they get caught up in competition and PRing, like you're saying, and forget that this is truly about living your best life and all those things that you've just touched upon. Real quick before you go, tell me about the rebranding into Ready State.
Oh, well, we're so thrilled. Yesterday, we announced to our subscribers that we're leaving Mobility WOD behind and we're transitioning into the Ready State. And that's the name of our little podcast project anyway. But we've been talking about, we actually went back, and the first set of notes I generated when I started teaching our basic course back in 2008 had this notion of being ready. The ready state was a concept I'd come up with over 10 years ago, which was about, let's control what we can control. How ready can we get you? Where are the dials that we can turn up today? Nutrition, movement quality, sleep, right? How do we optimize, or at least control what we can control, so that we're at maximum readiness today to do whatever? Hey, we're going to go play basketball. Great. I'm in, right? We're going to go for a big hike. Great. I'm in. I need you to help move these boxes, or, whatever it is. And, I need to be ready for this big meeting that I have today, right? Is my brain set up for that? And one of the things that I think people forget is that when we started Mobility WOD, the iPhone had been out for a year, and it did not have a video camera. That's how long we've been making videos and content, right? And we had one of the first blogs in the CrossFit space, and it was San Francisco CrossFit, blogspot.com. You can see our early iterations of, like, with Adrian and I talking about stretching and talking about, we didn't really use the word mobilizing yet. And, way back in 2007, I even wrote an article about basic PNF and being able to spot flexibility issues. I'll put those in quotation marks, back in 2007. So we've been talking and writing about this stuff for a long time. And we started making video content. We never set out to even create a business. We set out to solve a set of problems with people. And what ended up happening was that we ended up creating a lot of video content. And Juliet became a ninja at managing that video content. And now we just feel like, man, if you come to our site, it feels a little bit like the Library of Alexandria, right? You're like, I know where that scroll is. It's behind the stacks on the left, and that's my calf scroll. And this gives us a chance to really clean up the environment, so people will be able to access the old archives, which is like 4,000 videos. But we've made over like 200 pieces of brand new content that's organized by the way you want to train. For today, we have 30-minute follow-alongs, 20-minute follow-alongs, 10-minute follow-alongs. You can go to a pain section and say, my knee hurts. What should I do first? You can say, I have a diagnosis, and go to there. It's brand new, clean environment, which just makes it a lot easier for coaches and for athletes to communicate and to kind of talk to each other a little bit. And the other thing is, I think this is important, Barris was saying, is that when we started this, no one used the word mobility. We are the people who popularized the use of mobility. That was not a word. It was a word I chose specifically to leave stretching and flexibility behind. And now mobility is, like, if you search, it's like the word core or power bar. It is everywhere, right? So that's a little confusing. And then I think the other thing that happens is that, we were also the first company to ever use the word WOD, something WOD. So we always think it's been this way, but it's not. We were the first blank WOD. And now it's like, I'm so clever. Mobility, workout of the day. This is going to be great. Now, if you look at, we just got Vet WOD, and there's Sobriety WOD, and all the WODs in the world, Sugar WOD. There's so many WODs that it's very confusing. And we feel like we're not just like these other knockoff copycat WODs. We have been holding this space and developing this space. So it's time to just move out. And also, when I explain to people what a WOD is, if they're not in our community, they're really confused. They're like, WOD, DBAD, like Dick WOD? And I'm like, no, not like Dick WOD. So what we realize is that we feel like in this CrossFit community, we have really figured out a lot of things about how the human body works, but we haven't reached enough people. And changing the name away from sort of this technical idea and much more aspirational idea is really crucially important to understanding how the whole thing works, and being able to take what we've learned and help people who aren't exercising, who aren't in these communities, these intense training communities like that's a typical CrossFit gym, and give them the tools that we've developed. So we're thrilled to become, the ready state. And, it gives us a chance to reset the whole system. And it's something that we've been working on quietly for 2 years. That's how long it takes to change the gears on this thing. And, fortunately, I have the greatest, smartest, most organized CEO on the planet. Otherwise, it would probably never happen.
And just so you know, your impact is still felt regularly at the level 1s and level 2s. Everyone, every weekend we get questions on mobility that is clearly they've checked you out, they've read your books. So just so you know, sometimes even the best need to hear, that their legacy continues. So it's
I appreciate that. And I think people forget that, first it was Greg Glassman taught every lecture at every level one. Then it was Greg Glassman, Kelly Starrett, Dave Castro, and Nicole Carroll. I have been teaching level ones that long. There'd only be one level one a weekend. That was the one. I taught those. And then I was part of the first crew ever with Tony Budding and the crew where we split. And Castro led a crew and Nicole led a crew. And we had two. It's crucial that people understand that we're going to train no matter what. You don't have to have perfect movement to begin training or to begin modifying or scaling your movement. That's sort of a message that always gets lost in translation because people think they have to be perfect at everything. You don't. And J-Star, I think those need to go on a little longer, don't they?
Get to the bread, okay. J-Star, get to the bread.
She pulled them out, but I just didn't. I don't know if that was an hour. But J-Star thinks they're done. We just need to push them a little bit. I
cannot be responsible for your bread going wrong.
Let me show you. See that? See that goodness?
That looks delicious.
Listen to this. You hear that crunchy?
That was extremely crunchy.
Yeah, welcome to the game. Don't hate the baker, hate the game. So I think what's great about this movement is, when we started this thing, when I first came to CrossFit, in 2005, really 2004 is when I first discovered CrossFit. Who was overhead squatting?
Very few.
You couldn't buy a kettlebell in San Francisco. Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
We had to drive down to Santa Cruz to Play It Again Sports to buy kettlebells. I mean, you could have them shipped for some ungodly amount from Dragon Door in Russia, or you drove down to Santa Cruz. And so the world has changed. I think you can buy, kettlebells at like Target. I mean,
yeah, my mom's got an 8-pounder from Target.
Yeah. And Target has grocery stores. So I'm like, when you can buy a kettlebell at a grocery store, something has changed. So, we've come a long way, baby. And now we get to have the next conversation with people, and that's great. We've leveled up, and now let's have the next combo. And I think that's the key, is that everyone is ready for the next level of sophistication, and that's okay. We're gonna get better, and we're gonna continue to meet people's needs as they become more sophisticated. And our communities have become really, really competent. And that is really exciting. It's really, it's something I take for granted. And if we're talking to a lot of CrossFitters here, I get to go around the world and talk to everyone. Choose a high performance environment, choose an Olympic team, a national team, I see everyone's stuff. I think people forget how many places we've been, Warriors are my team, Rockets are my team, Wizards are my team. We see everyone's business. And I take for granted sometimes that we all speak Olympic lifting. My wife, who doesn't every once in a while, she's like, what's the heaving snatch balance? She hates the name. She doesn't care. Juliet Starrett can Olympic lift like anyone's business, and, my kids Olympic lift, and they know what that language is, and they know what good positions and shapes are. When I go into the world and people can't push press, I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I think that, I think it was a long time ago, Mike Bergner said, if everyone could muscle snatch, it would cure shoulder cancer, something to that effect. And I agree. And so I think we're really on to these practices that are incredible. And I don't take it for granted how sophisticated our community is, because, once you get spun up into the CrossFit language, what we're really saying is, hey, here are these really modern training tools, and you're going to spend a lifetime refining them and understanding them. I don't think I started deadlifting really till 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, that's what deadlifting is. I got it. I understand. And then now I started deadlifting. I've been deadlifting for years, decades, but I finally understood after decades of practice. I finally began to understand. So I think that's what's really cool about this. We keep waiting. Are we ever going to burn out and train this way? Nope. Never. Just doesn't.
I know you got to go. Before you go, I always ask one book you recommend. Obviously, people should check out Supple Leopard, Desk Bound, all your books, but any book you recommend that you haven't written?
Yeah. Juliet and I read a ton. I think there's two things that people get wrong. One is that absolutely their sleep. They're not taking full advantage of sleep. Matt Walker wrote a book called Why We Sleep. It should be mandatory reading for anyone who fancies themselves a trainee. Second thing is our favorite nutrition book in the whole world is a book called Deep Nutrition by Dr. Kate Shanahan. And whatever you do, keto, paleo, macro, vegan, our favorite is pagan, right? Which is plant-based diet with small amounts of animal protein, paleo, vegan, pagan. And you'll see that there are things that human beings do. We cook meat on the bone. We eat the skin. We eat bone broth. We eat organs. Like, we don't use vegetable oils. Like, you should eat the rainbow. And she has distilled down the best science and the best practices across cultures, and they come back to fundamentals. And then you can tweak them up and tweak them down, whether you want to be shredded or be able to have enough fuel to ride 100 miles. You'll see that it's all in there.
Thank you very much. I know you got a busy day, but I appreciate your time. That was a huge amount of knowledge, especially on bread. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Good to see you again.
You got it. Have a great day.